Ronan Vey's hands were covered in grease, his brow slick with sweat, as he crouched over the humming core of a levitation drone. Sparks danced across his workbench, reflecting off the metal walls of the cramped orbital workshop. He wiped a hand across his forehead and muttered, "Almost done, just one more calibration." Suddenly the room shook violently. Alarm screamed. A sharp metallic groan echoed through the hall. Ronan's heart jumped into his throat. What the? Before he could finish, a bright, searing light tore through the ceiling above him. Dust and fragments rained down. Something massive had broken through. He ducked instinctively, shielding his face as a winged shadow slammed into the floor, sending sparks flying from the dropped tools. The air filled with the scent of scorched metal and something strange. Sweet, almost floral, yet alien. Ronan peeked from behind the console. A small dragon, or at least it looked like one, was sprawled on the workshop floor. Its scales shimmered like liquid silver, reflecting the alarm lights. Two luminous eyes fixed on him, unafraid, almost curiously amused. It tilted its head and let out a sound that was half chirp, half laughter. Ronan froze, a wave of disbelief hitting him. "It's laughing?" he whispered to himself. The creature twitched its wings, causing a loose panel to slam against the wall. Sparks erupted again. The drone, the one he had been repairing, floated dangerously close to the dragon. It whirled, wings flaring. Panic flashed across its tiny face. Ronan had no time to think. He grabbed the plasma welder from the bench, pointing it carefully at the creature, not to attack, but to deter it from hurting itself, or him. "Easy, easy," he said firmly. His voice wavered, but his hands were steady. "I won't hurt you, just stay calm." The dragon flinched but did not flee. It tilted its head again, letting out a high-pitched giggle that sounded disturbingly human. Ronan's pulse raced. He took a step forward. Every instinct screamed danger, yet something in the dragon's eyes made him pause, hesitate, and calculate. A thought struck him. This wasn't a random accident. That emblem on its shoulder, a tiny crest shaped like interlocking triangles, was royal. He had seen similar markings in old galactic archives. Could it be a dragonair? Before he could process further, another shadow streaked across the broken ceiling. A second, smaller dragon landed with a soft thud, its tail knocking over a pile of tools. It chirped and ran to the first dragon, wrapping its tail around the silver-scaled one like a protective hug. They nuzzled each other and laughed in a way that made Ronan's chest tighten. They were playful, childlike. Ronan knew he had a choice. Step back and let them destroy his workshop, or act. He grabbed a nearby crate and carefully blocked the path of the spinning levitation drone. Sparks sizzled where metal met metal, but the drone slowed. One dragon's eyes widened at the movement. "Shoo, it's okay," he whispered. Slowly, deliberately, he crouched low and extended a hand. "I'm not your enemy. I just want to help." His voice carried calm authority, and somehow the creatures understood. One dragon tilted its head and stepped closer, testing his hand with a soft nuzzle. A small, relieved laugh escaped Ronan. The second dragon hopped atop a pile of tools, then slid down and landed near him, wings flaring playfully. His heart pounded, but he smiled for the first time since the chaos began. Small victories mattered. For a moment the tension eased. He had earned their trust. But the relief was short-lived. The ceiling groaned again, louder, and the hull trembled beneath him. Ronan looked up. A glint of light caught his eye, a figure larger this time, barely visible through the fractured metal and flickering lights. It wasn't playful. Its movements were deliberate, predatory. The childlike dragons froze. Ronan's pulse accelerated. Whoever, or whatever, was coming wasn't friendly. He had saved the little ones for now, but the bigger threat was imminent, unstoppable, and closing fast. He had no choice. With a deep breath, he grabbed a maintenance harness, clipped it to the overhead rail, and swung himself toward the console. His mind raced. He needed a plan. He needed every ounce of courage and skill he had. Protecting these creatures wasn't just about survival, it was about doing what no one else dared. Trusting his judgment, trusting his heart. And then, a sharp metallic crack echoed through the room. A panel from the ceiling split free, and a beam of unknown energy streaked past the dragons, missing by inches. Ronan barely ducked in time. He looked at the silver dragon, whose laughter had faded to a frightened whine. "Hang on," he shouted, determination hardening in his voice. "I've got you." Something outside the hull shifted. A faint shadow moved across the viewport. Ronan froze, eyes wide. The workshop wasn't just under attack, it was under siege. And he, a lone human mechanic, was now the only thing standing between the dragon heirs and disaster. The silver-scaled dragon stepped closer, pressing against his arm as if sensing the danger ahead. Its glowing eyes met his, unblinking, almost challenging. Ronan swallowed hard. This was no ordinary night, no ordinary rescue. The universe had just thrown him into a storm he had no choice but to face. And then, a deafening roar shook the hull, louder than anything Ronan had ever heard. Sparks flew, the lights flickered, and the shadows beyond the viewport twisted unnaturally. The dragons tensed. Ronan's heart pounded. He gripped the plasma welder tightly, eyes darting toward the approaching threat. Whatever comes next, he muttered, jaw set, I won't let anything touch them. A massive shadow loomed, filling the viewport, and in that instant, everything changed. Ronan's breathing was sharp and fast, but he didn't let fear control him. The silver-scaled dragon pressed against his arm, its small body trembling, while the second, smaller dragon tucked itself behind a pile of tools, eyes wide with curiosity and alarm. The roar outside still echoed, deep and resonant, shaking the walls. Whatever it was coming closer. He scanned the workshop quickly. Broken panels, scattered tools, sparking drones. This place could collapse in seconds. He had to act fast. His mind raced, thinking of every repair job, every emergency drill he had run through alone in this station. He grabbed a stack of magnetic plates and welded them into a quick barricade, blocking the path where the larger creature might enter. Sparks flew and he flinched at each pop, but he held his ground. Stay behind me, he whispered to the dragons, his voice steady though his heart hammered. I've got this. The larger shadow outside shifted, and a metallic scraping sound reached his ears. Something, or someone, was trying to break in. Ronan knew his small barricade wouldn't hold forever. He needed a way to distract or confuse the intruder. His eyes fell on the levitation drones he had just repaired. An idea sparked. He grabbed the control pad and quickly programmed them to hover in a wide arc, flashing lights and rotating rapidly. It was a gamble, but it might buy him precious seconds. The drones whirred to life, buzzing like angry bees, their beams casting chaotic shadows across the walls. The dragons' fear eased slightly, their small bodies relaxing as they watched the lights. One of the dragons let out a soft chirp, almost like a laugh. The intruder paused. There was a metallic clang, then silence. Ronan exhaled quietly. For now the drones had done their job. But he knew this was only temporary. Whoever, or whatever, was outside wasn't going to give up easily. He turned his attention back to the dragons. They were playful, curious, almost human in their gestures. But the markings on their shoulders, the tiny crests, made his stomach knot. These were no ordinary creatures. They were heirs of the Dragon Emperor, hidden for their safety. Somehow, fate had placed them in the hands of a human mechanic. And now they were counting on him. Ronan needed to protect them, but he also needed to learn more. He crawled to the corner of the workshop where the communication console was still functional. Through the flickering lights, he accessed the station's internal logs. He found it immediately, a trace of encrypted transmissions, signals pointing to a fleet of ships approaching the station. Not random traffic. These were tracking signals, deliberate and targeted. Someone is coming for them, he muttered. His mind ran through options. The station was small, the exits limited. Fighting a fleet was impossible. But hiding them in plain sight, maybe that could work. Maybe a human could outsmart even the most powerful dragons of the Empire. He looked at the smaller dragon first. Its eyes followed his every movement, as if trying to understand his intentions. He extended a hand, letting it nuzzle gently. I won't let anyone hurt you, he said. I promise. The dragon chirped, a small puff of relief, and pressed against him. The gesture filled him with determination. He would not fail. Another rumble shook the workshop. Panels rattled. One of the dragons screeched, flapping wings wildly. Ronan grabbed a heavy metal crate and shoved it toward the corner where the drones hovered. The crate toppled, clanging loudly, creating a distraction while he secured the dragons in a small reinforced alcove he had set up for emergencies. He had wired it with soft magnetic fields, enough to keep them from flying off or getting hurt. The roar outside returned, closer this time, accompanied by a hum of strange energy. Shadows pressed against the windows. Ronan's stomach clenched. He realized the intruders were more than just aggressive, they were organized, intelligent, and ruthless. But the dragons, despite their small size, trusted him. That trust was a weapon. That trust was a reason to fight. He scanned the alcove. One of the dragons reached a claw toward a dangling tool, its movement clumsy but precise. Ronan grabbed it before it fell. Careful, he warned. The dragon looked up, almost knowingly, as if approving his intervention. That tiny interaction, a simple connection, reminded him why he had to succeed. Then the unexpected happened. The ceiling panels groaned again, but this time, one shifted downward slowly, revealing a glint of metal. Another small creature, different from the dragons, something partially robotic, hovering with lights blinking like eyes. Ronan froze. This was not a dragon. Not a human. Something unknown, something that didn't belong anywhere he could recognize. It drifted silently, scanning, assessing. The dragon shrank back instinctively. The small silver-scaled one chirped nervously, pressing against his chest. Ronan's mind raced. He had no idea if this new presence was friend or foe. Every instinct screamed danger. But he couldn't panic, not with the heirs in his care. "Okay," he whispered, voice steady though his hands shook slightly. "We figure this out together." He adjusted the magnetic field controls, creating a temporary barrier between the hovering unknown and the alcove. The creature paused, lights flickering. For now it didn't attack. But its presence was a clear warning. The danger was escalating, and this human was now trapped in a game far bigger than he could imagine. Ronan looked down at the two dragons huddled together, their small bodies trusting him completely. His jaw tightened. He had no choice. He had to protect them, outsmart the unknown, and survive. Every plan, every action, every decision from this moment on would matter. Failure was not an option, not for him, not for them. A low hum filled the room, growing louder, vibrating through the hall. The drone's lights flickered, the alcove's magnetic fields fluctuated, and the unknown presence drifted closer. Ronan's heart pounded, every nerve on edge. He gritted his teeth, gripping the plasma welder like a lifeline. Something was coming. Something fast. And whatever it was, it wouldn't wait for him to be ready. The low hum in the workshop grew louder, vibrating through Ronan's bones. He crouched in the alcove, gripping the plasma welder, watching the unknown hovering presence inch closer. The two dragons huddled against him, eyes wide, wings trembling. Their trust burned in his chest, and he swore silently, "I won't let anything happen to them." Then the unexpected happened. A holographic panel flickered to life on the ceiling, projecting a series of coded symbols. Ronan recognized them immediately, imperial markings the same as the tiny crests on the dragon's shoulders. His mind raced. Someone had tracked the heirs here, not by chance but with intent. The small silver dragon chirped, almost anxiously, and pressed against his arm. It knew the danger even if he didn't. That simple gesture sparked a thought. The dragons were more intelligent than anyone had believed. If they could communicate, or sense, what was coming, then maybe, just maybe, they could help him survive. He lunged for the console, fingers flying over touchpads, hacking into the station's network. The hum outside rose in pitch, a warning. Ronan worked quickly, decrypting the signals and tracing their origin. What he found made his stomach drop. The transmissions weren't just monitoring, they were tracking the heirs' every move. Someone inside the Dragon Emperor's empire had orchestrated their placement here. A coup, he realized. A trap. The hovering presence shifted, lights blinking faster, almost scanning him. Ronan didn't flinch. Instead, he quickly reprogrammed the drones, sending them to form a protective circle around the alcove. Sparks flew as the drones collided midair, but the unknown object paused, confused. Small victories mattered. "Okay," Ronan whispered, glancing at the dragons. "We need to move. Now." He guided them through a narrow maintenance tunnel, one that led toward a secondary airlock. The tunnel was dark, cramped, and full of dangling wires. Every step was a gamble. One wrong move and they could all be electrocuted, or worse. A sudden vibration ran along the hall. The dragons froze. Ronan felt it before he heard it. The station's outer wall was being pierced by something small, fast, and precise. The Emperor's agents weren't sending soldiers, they were sending machines. Advanced, lethal, and unrelenting. He kept moving, sweat dripping down his face, heart pounding. One of the drones whizzed past, narrowly missing a dangling cable, and Ronan cursed under his breath. The dragons were close, trusting him completely. That trust was both a blessing and a weight. Every decision he made could save them, or doom them. Then, in the flickering red light of the tunnel, Ronan saw it. A secondary drone, unlike the ones he'd built, hovered silently in front of them. Its metallic body glinted under the emergency lights, and a panel slid open, revealing a camera lens shaped like an eye. It was scanning them. It knew exactly who the dragons were. Ronan froze. One wrong move could trigger an alarm, drawing more of the Emperor's forces. But hiding was useless. He needed a plan, And fast. He looked at the dragons, their glowing eyes wide with anticipation. They were counting on him. That realization sparked a clarity he hadn't felt before. Humans survive because we think, because we act, because we care. He pulled out a small EMP device from his toolkit, a prototype meant for disabling rogue drones during repairs. It had limited range, but it might be enough. With the dragons huddled close, he activated it. The unknown drone flickered violently, sparks flying from its joints, then crashed into the wall with a metallic clang. The dragons chirped, startled but unharmed. Small payoff. Good. That's a start, he muttered. But there was no time to celebrate. The console lights blinked again. More signals. The Emperor's agents were closing in. He needed to find the source to understand who had sent the heirs here and why. Creeping through the tunnel, he discovered a maintenance hatch partially hidden behind a panel. Inside was a small compartment filled with encrypted data crystals. Ronan's pulse raced. He grabbed one and accessed it with his portable reader. The files revealed shocking intelligence. The Dragon Emperor's empire was fractured. A faction had stolen the heirs and hidden them on purpose, hoping to manipulate or control the succession. The dragons watched as he worked, their small bodies pressed close to him. One reached out a claw, touching the reader. Ronan felt an almost human-like curiosity in the gesture. He realized the dragons weren't just victims. They were aware, intelligent, and capable of influence. They could help him if he trusted them. Before he could process the full implications, the wall next to the hatch groaned and cracked. Light flickered across the narrow tunnel, revealing another shadow. This one was humanoid, but armored, sleek, and moving with predatory grace. Its helmet reflected the dim light, and Ronan recognized the insignia instantly. Imperial agents. Not drones this time. Real beings coming for the heirs. He grabbed the dragons, pressing them close to his chest. "Hang on," he whispered, voice firm. "We're not going down without a fight." His mind raced through options. Traps, distractions, escape routes. Every second counted. The armored figure stepped into the light, scanning. Ronan's breath caught. There was no way he could fight one of them head-on, let alone a team. But he noticed something, a cable hanging from the ceiling, frayed but connected to a high-voltage panel. A plan sparked. It was risky, maybe suicidal, but it just might work. He adjusted his grip on the dragons, positioned the cable, and readied the EMP device. His heart pounded, sweat dripping into his eyes. One wrong move and the heirs could be captured, or worse. But Ronan had never been one to give up. Not on machines, not on creatures, not on life itself. The armored agent moved closer, light scanning the alcove. Ronan's finger tightened on the trigger. And then a sharp metallic hiss echoed. The agent paused, sensing something was off. The dragons pressed closer to him, their soft purrs and chirps merging into the tension of the moment. Ronan held his breath. Every second stretched into an eternity. The fate of the Dragon Emperor's hidden heirs rested on one human, one daring move, one perfect calculation. The shadow lunged. Ronan's heart hammered in his chest as the armored figure lunged forward. His hands gripped the dragons tightly, feeling their small bodies tense with fear. He could see the agent's visor reflect the dim, flickering lights of the tunnel. Every instinct screamed danger. Every second counted. He barely had time to react. With a desperate lunge, he pulled the frayed cable from the ceiling and slammed it against the high-voltage panel. Sparks exploded in a shower of blue light, arcs of electricity dancing across the narrow tunnel. The armored agent froze mid-step, a hiss of metal echoing as circuits shorted. Ronan yanked the dragons back into the shadows, pressing them close to his chest. Their small hearts pounded against his ribcage, but they didn't scream, didn't panic. They trusted him. The EMP device activated simultaneously, sending a pulse through the hallway. Machines in the area stuttered and sparked. The drones, once under his control, now flared erratically, scattering sparks and light in all directions. It was chaos, exactly what he needed. The intruders faltered, giving Ronan the precious seconds to act decisively. He sprinted toward a side hatch, dragging the dragons along, weaving between falling panels and sparking wires. A low rumble reverberated through the station as the ceiling shuddered under the strain of the intruders' force. Ronan's hands were raw from gripping the plasma welder and dragging the dragons, but he didn't stop. Every step forward mattered. Every second could mean life or death. The first dragon, silver-scaled and small, chirped nervously as a falling pipe clanged to the floor near them. Ronan swatted it aside with a makeshift wrench, never breaking stride. The smaller dragon hopped onto his shoulder, wrapping its tail around his neck. He felt its warmth, its trust, and it strengthened his resolve. They were counting on him and he would not fail. Another armored agent appeared, this one faster, moving with deadly precision. Ronan assessed quickly, too fast to outrun. He scanned the area and spotted the emergency airlock. It was partially open, just enough for them to squeeze through, but doing so would trigger the station's defense systems. That could either save them or doom them. He had no choice. "Hold on," he shouted, pressing the dragons tightly to his chest. With one fluid motion, he pushed the silver dragon into the airlock first, guiding it through. The smaller dragon followed, squealing with excitement despite the danger. Ronan jumped last, feeling the airlock's magnetic seals snap closed behind them. Sparks shot across the floor as the intruders slammed against the bulkhead. The airlock hissed, pressurizing, but the calm was brief. Outside the viewport, he could see more threats, shapes moving across the hull, glowing weapons scanning for movement. The dragons pressed closer to him, their small bodies shaking. His pulse quickened. This isn't over, he thought. Not by a long shot. He tapped the console, overriding the airlock controls to jettison a small cargo pod toward the approaching hull intruders. The pod detonated in a controlled explosion, sending debris scattering in zero gravity. The armored agents were momentarily blinded and thrown off course. Ronan gritted his teeth, guiding the dragons through the maintenance tunnels to a safer compartment. Every action, every calculation, every risk had to be perfect. Failure was not an option. The silver-scaled dragon chirped softly, brushing against his chest. Its eyes, bright and intelligent, met his. "We're not alone," Ronan murmured. "And we're going to survive this." The smaller dragon leaned into him as well, pressing its head against his shoulder. The simple connection, the trust they placed in him, filled him with strength he didn't know he had. Then the station shook violently. A massive thruster from the hull had exploded outside, sending the structure teetering toward a tumbling spin. Sparks rained from the ceiling, tools bounced across the floor, and the air grew tense with static. The dragons squeaked in alarm and Ronan's mind raced. If the station lost balance, they would all be ejected into space. He had to stabilize it. He sprinted to the control hub, dragging the dragons behind him. Using a combination of mechanical overrides and improvised magnetic clamps, he stabilized the failing thruster. Sweat poured down his face, but his hands were precise, his movements deliberate. The station leveled slightly, and the dragons let out small chirps of relief. Small victory, but not complete. They were safe for now. Outside the viewport, shadows shifted again. More shapes, larger this time, scanned the hull. Ronan's jaw tightened. Whoever these agents were, they were relentless. They wouldn't stop. But Ronan had learned something vital in these hours. Humans survive because we act, we adapt, we trust our intelligence, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves. The dragons looked up at him, their bright eyes full of hope and trust. He felt a surge of determination unlike anything before. "We're not finished yet," he said firmly. "Not by a long shot." A sudden metallic screech echoed through the station. A large figure burst through a secondary hatch, larger and more armored than the others. It charged. Ronan barely had time to react. He grabbed a nearby cable, swung it with all his strength, and connected it to an exposed conduit. Sparks exploded, the intruder faltered, and Ronan shielded the dragons with his body. For a tense moment, the chaos paused. The dragons pressed against him, safe under his protection. Ronan's chest heaved with exhaustion, fear, and determination. Every nerve in his body screamed, but he had held them. For now, the Imperial agents were temporarily defeated, the dragons unharmed. But the final shadow loomed in the viewport. A massive ship, larger than anything he had seen, approached the station. Its weapons glowed, scanning the hull, ready to strike. Ronan's heart sank. He had won this battle, but the war, and the safety of the Dragon Emperor's heirs, was far from over. The silver-scaled dragon chirped softly, almost knowingly. Ronan swallowed hard, looking at the two creatures he had sworn to protect. "We're not done," he whispered. "This is just the beginning." And outside, beyond the viewport, the shadows shifted once more. Something bigger, smarter, and far more dangerous was coming. Ronan tightened his grip on the dragons, jaw set. The impossible odds had never mattered before. Not now. Not ever. Ronan's chest heaved, sweat slicking his hair to his forehead, but he didn't release his grip on the dragons. The silver-scaled air pressed against his arm, small claws digging gently into his sleeve, while the smaller one pressed its head against his shoulder. Their soft chirps and playful nuzzles contrasted sharply with the chaos outside, but Ronan knew better. The danger had only been postponed. The Emperor's empire, fractured and ruthless, was still out there. He scanned the workshop, now battered and scorched from the intrusions. Broken panels, singed wires and scattered tools littered the floor. Yet in the center of the chaos, the dragons were unharmed. That was his victory. Not the repaired drones, not the temporary shields, theirs was the life he had protected. That small payoff, their safety, gave him a sliver of pride and hope. The silver dragon chirped and hopped onto his shoulder, wrapping its tail around his neck. Its eyes glowed brightly, intelligent and aware. Ronan's hand instinctively stroked its scales. "You're safe," he murmured. "I promise. I'll always protect you." The dragon's small laugh, soft and musical, warmed the tense air. He knew the station wouldn't hold long if the Emperor's forces returned in full. The hull had taken severe damage, life support had flickered dangerously, and the navigation system was unstable. But the dragons for now were safe. That was enough. For now. Ronan moved carefully through the wrecked workshop, gathering what supplies he could. Every second mattered. He set up a small containment area using magnetic fields to prevent the dragons from wandering into danger while he worked. The smaller dragon pressed its face to his chest, eyes wide as if sensing the weight of the task ahead. He tapped the console, scanning for nearby sectors that might provide temporary refuge. One option emerged, an uncharted moon isolated and outside the usual patrol routes. It wasn't perfect, but it could be a haven. Ronan made rapid calculations: fuel, time, energy. The odds were slim, but he could get them there safely. Humans survive by thinking, he reminded himself. By acting decisively. By protecting those who cannot protect themselves. He looked down at the dragons again. The silver-scaled air nuzzled him, a small chirp vibrating through his arm. The smaller one squeaked playfully but didn't leave his shoulder. They were trusting him completely, and that trust was heavier than any tool, any weapon. It was responsibility. It was courage. It was human. Ronan initiated the station's emergency thrusters. Sparks erupted as the old systems groaned, but he guided the movement carefully, avoiding damaged sections of the hull. The dragons watched, alert and curious. Their small bodies shifted slightly with each adjustment, tails flicking, wings trembling. He adjusted the magnetic harnesses to keep them stable, a tiny payoff that brought him a brief smile. They were safe if only for the moment. As the station slowly shifted into trajectory toward the moon, the viewport flickered. Shapes moved in the distance, scouts from the Emperor's fleet. Ronan's jaw tightened. The battle wasn't over. They could still be discovered. But he had an edge now. He had the element of unpredictability, and he had allies who were more than they seemed. He crouched beside the dragons, whispering encouragement. "We'll make it," he said firmly. "Just a little longer. I promise." The silver-scaled one chirped softly, almost knowingly, as if acknowledging that he had done more than survive. He had led, protected, and cared when no one else could. That bond, fragile and unlikely, was stronger than any Imperial fleet. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by small chirps and the occasional hum of the station. Ronan guided them through navigation corrections, monitoring the hull and checking the containment fields. The dragon's trust never wavered. In fact, the silver-scaled air leaned closer, letting Ronan feel its warmth and intelligence. A small payoff for his relentless courage, a reminder that humans shine brightest when they protect and endure. Finally, the station's thrusters slowed as the uncharted moon came into view. Its barren surface promised isolation, safety, and a chance to regroup. Ronan guided the station toward a makeshift landing zone. The hull groaned, dust kicked up, but they touched down without incident. The dragons tumbled onto the moon's surface, chirping and laughing softly, unafraid. He knelt beside them, letting them nuzzle and explore the small crater that would be their temporary home. Ronan's hands shook with exhaustion, but a sense of accomplishment filled him. They were safe. He had done it. Against impossible odds, a human mechanic had outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and protected two of the most valuable beings in the galaxy. That was HFY, human courage, intelligence, and empathy triumphing over overwhelming danger. He glanced at the horizon. The moon's barren landscape was peaceful, but he knew the peace was temporary. The Emperor's empire, fractured and far-reaching, would not forget this intrusion. But Ronan also knew something important. Humans could be unpredictable. Humans could endure. And humans could inspire loyalty, even from the most extraordinary creatures. The silver-scaled dragon chirped and nudged a small glowing panel toward him. Ronan picked it up, noticing a faint signal emanating from it, a distant transmission from somewhere far beyond the known sectors. His brow furrowed. Whoever sent it was watching, waiting. And this signal hinted at a much larger story, one that could pull them all deeper into danger, intrigue, and adventure. He stood, brushing dust off his coveralls, dragons at his sides. He looked up at the barren horizon and whispered, "This isn't over. Not even close." The smaller dragon chirped in agreement, and the silver one's tail wrapped around his arm protectively. Ronan's eyes narrowed. He didn't know what was waiting out there, rebels, factions, or new enemies, but he was ready. Humans had survived worse. Humans had triumphed against impossible odds. And now they would face whatever came next together. As the moon's twin suns dipped behind the horizon, the transmission panel flickered again. A soft, melodic tone hummed. The dragons perked up. Ronan's heart skipped a beat. Something, somewhere far beyond the stars, was calling. A bigger challenge, a larger mystery was waiting. He crouched beside the dragons, gripping their tiny forms protectively, whispering, "Whatever it is, we face it. And we survive. Together." And somewhere in the void of space, beyond the Emperor's reach, a new adventure was beginning.